we decided to add a photograph about the overall tapestry theme that you really were inspired by, and that's the one of the moon over Magnolia School. And could you talk a little bit about this photo and how it relates to how you got into this chapter and writing it?
Certainly. Well, people probably heard of Tim Durkin, Jenny Durkin's brother. He's got tons of famous moon photos over the top of the Space Needle. So a lot of people have been kind of chasing the moon just because of Tim Durkin. And this was one of the things I was doing. But that night in the summer of 2018, they were actually working. It was almost 10 at night, and they were sawing through the brick with the diamond tip saw on Magnolia Elementary. And so all these thoughts were running through my mind as I was thinking about the book that I was trying to write, or my chapter for the book, and then watching the moon come up. And at that time, I was actually reading Thomas Wolfe, and the way he can write paragraph-long sentences, I think kind of had all these thoughts spinning together at one time. So I had these thoughts spinning around in my head about being there when I was in elementary school. That was called the lower playfield. When I went to Magnolia Elementary, I remember playing baseball down there and then kickball up above. But at that moment, the sounds coming from the school late at night was just almost sort of ghostly.
Huh. Well, it certainly comes out in the photo, and the school is really a huge touchstone. Tell us about your best memories from this school that are reflected in your chapter.
Well, I recall when they were doing all this construction work that a lot of the front stairs were jackhammered out. And I remember, I think you probably have a photo of one of maybe it's a kindergarten graduation class sitting on the front stairs. That's where they would take the photos.
Yes.
I remember Mrs. Galbraith, who was the math teacher in the 5th grade. She was talking about multiplying, dividing fractions, and she wanted to not tell what inverted meant. So she asked a student to stand up in front of the class, and she was, really good sized and strong, not overweight, but just strong. She lifted the boy up, rotating him 180 degrees, so he was upside down, and she said, "Now this is what inverted means." And I don't think anyone that was in that class ever forgot what inverted meant.
I don't think you could get away with that today.
Right. Who knows where she'd be in the principal's office. Another thing that I recall in the 5th grade was going over to a classmate's house during lunch hour. His parents were gone, and he said, "My dad's got some Playboy magazines. Do you want to see them?" So we snuck over there. We're not supposed to leave the school grounds, but went over there, and it was probably the first time some of us have ever seen a partially naked person. And that's just some of the things that I think happened at that age.
What grade were you in at the time?
That was the 5th grade.
Oh my, oh my, oh my.
So it was pretty exciting. One thing that just recently happened last summer was I got a call from an editor of a magazine that's not being published now, but he said there's a man that lives in Magnolia who's going to be turning 100 soon. He's a World War II veteran. Would you like to interview him and write an article? And I said, yes, I would. And it turned out it's Bob Chrisman's dad.
Oh.
And he had actually was on Tinian Island and helped load the atomic bombs onto the Enola Gay. But I did confess to him when I was over there interviewing him about the time we snuck over there. So when he reads the book, he won't be too shocked.
So here we have visual proof that you're growing up in Magnolia, and this bicycle has a story behind it as well.
All kids and bicycles is sort of a milestone. When they get a bicycle, they have a new freedom. I remember going down to Tommy's bicycle shop, which is now where Belltown is. It was like a former warehouse. The floors were like the old spaghetti factory, really thick planked floors with scars and patina, and just had their own story to tell. But it was dark and grungy inside. But once we got inside, there were all these rows of shiny new bikes and excitement. And So I picked out a bike, which was that one, and we loaded it into the 51 Pontiac station wagon,
Yeah.
a woody or actually it wasn't really wood, it was painted metal wood on the side at that time. Took it home and learning how to ride. I had ridden someone's bike with training wheels and you just kind of rock from side to side. So I thought that was ridiculous and didn't want training wheels. So I would just, ride as far as I could till I fell off. And I guess kind of a negative reinforcement. But, that was a thrill and a little, I think I wrote in the book that about a year or two later, I had gotten a speedometer for it and it went up to 45 miles an hour. I took it over to the east side of Lawton Elementary School, which is a really steep hill that dead ends, to see how fast it would go. So I go all the way to the top and it levels out at the bottom with plenty of room to stop, or so I thought. And kept my eye on the speedometer and it pegged itself at 45 and I had about 300 feet before the intersection. That's where the midnight mart is. So I locked up the brakes and slid for about 300 feet until the back tire exploded. I stopped before the intersection. And then the story goes on that I got a new tire and tube for it and took it down to the Magnolia Village to one of the many, many gas stations. And they had a new type of air pump. Instead of just holding it on there, you kind of set the pressure and it got locked on and wouldn't come off and kept pumping air until the tire exploded again.
Wow.
And it was really loud and people, almost throughout the village heard it. I was so upset the attendant at the gas station fixed it for free. But that's just the way, things go in Magnolia.
It's the kind of thing where these are disasters in the moment, but what great stories and memories afterward. Talk a little bit about the paper drive.
Well, the paper drives were every year for things that weren't in the school budget, like, a new mimeograph machine. The mimeograph machines had this, when they were running this, I think it was methanol and some type of alcohol that just wafted out throughout the building. But that's what the money was used for, was things that weren't in the budget. But we would go out and each room would compete with the other rooms trying to see who could collect the most papers. And then we would bundle them up and take them to school. And what looks like windows was cyclone fencing, and that was an indoor play field for when it was raining, and the papers would be stored in there and stacked up and then hauled away with semi trucks.
This is early day recycling, and you can see from this photo, it was a big deal. And it was all those things people enjoyed. It wasn't drudgery or, we enjoyed doing it. It was like a competition. I remember I really enjoyed Popular Science and Mechanic magazines, and I had new ones from the 50s and 60s, or these were the 50s then. But this one cache that I got in a house near where I live now had probably 100 Popular Science and Mechanics going back to as far as 1909. And that was a real treat. I still have some of those that didn't make it to the recycling. I thought someday they're going to be worth a fortune. I've looked on eBay and they're worth about $1. Wow.